Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Hakem, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. And boy, do we have a lot to get to this morning. Of course, the big topic, Trump has said no more debates. I've had enough debates. What are your thoughts regarding that? Good idea, bad idea, indifferent? I think he has a good point. After what we saw with the moderators at ABC, I think there's something to be said that he should go, if he's going to do a debate, to a more friendly outlet like Fox. We're going to talk about exactly what he had to say, and he gave an exclusive interview to the New York Post and why he believed it was not a good idea to do a third debate. Maybe that's not the right way to word it. Also, we're going to hear from Matt McCarthy this morning, acting Steuben County and Family Court judge. He is running for the full term, 10 years. We'll talk to him about that as well. All right, let's go to some comments. First off, alternative media is overwhelmingly reporting on all the outrage over how the current administration is ruining the country. But mainstream just keeps quiet, debunks, gaslights, and falls in line. I actually have a very good article that we are going to get to. And it's more about what they won't report in some instances than what they are reporting or how they're twisting. And I'll get to that, tying in with that viewer's comments. Also, everyone knows there's a huge problem. All we seem to be able to do is complain to each other while we hope and pray for new leaders. This is a global problem. There is a very good point there. Look, if you just go home and maybe watch the nightly news, maybe don't even do that, you just watch the debate, you may not even notice the extreme bias because you're not used to watching the news. It's just you're maybe expecting the live fact-checking that proves to be inaccurate. Yes, the ill-informed voters, it is a major problem. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Continuing with comments from after yesterday's program. How about this? No, this is not made up. Frank, yet another great show. Thanks so much. That was yesterday with Congressman Nick Langworthy, and we always appreciate the congressman being on the show. I thought he did a great job. Your show is like having our own national newsman right here in our community. Well, I don't know about that, but thank you very much. I'm a frankly speaking addict and proud of it. Well, hey, look at that. I know you're thinking these are texts from myself. They are not texts from myself, though I am a frankly speaking addict. This is from a different viewer. Your show should be 3 hours long or even longer. Really enjoy it. Keep up the good work. But referencing my earlier question, which I must have missed, and I apologize, has the Biden-Harris administration made good on any of their promises? No, not that I'm aware of. When you think about it, look at what... If they did make good on their promises, then why is Kamala Harris running on fixing the problems of this administration? So you raise a very good point there. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, no, I will say there's a few things. For instance, Biden ran and Biden-Harris ran that they were going to get rid of Trump's wall and the protections he put in at the border, and that was one of the first executive orders that Biden signed. So there are some promises. Of course, they were detrimental, but they did make good on. And we're seeing the repercussions of that now. But I do appreciate the very kind comments after yesterday's show. Everybody seemed to enjoy the congressman being on the show. Okay, this is a question, and a very, very good question. I'm glad this viewer brought it up. I'm hearing there's a proposal on the ballot in November to amend the New York State Constitution. What do you know about it? Well, this is a very important point. I don't know if I want to read the whole text, but I am going to show you. I think it... Listen, this is a little wonky, but it's important because what's one of the major goals here on Frankly Speaking is to have informed voters. So when you go to the booth in November, it's not a guessing game, right? So bear with me as I read legalese, but this is what you'll experience at the ballot box come November. Concurrent resolutions of the Senate and Assembly proposing an amendment to Section 11 of Article 1 of the Constitution in relation to equal protection. So it's about equal protection. This is what you're voting on. Section 1 resolved, if the Assembly concur, that Section 11 of Article 1 of the Constitution be amended to read as follows. Okay, ready? And I'll tell you where it's changing. No person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws of the state or any subdivision thereof. No person shall, because of race, color, and here we go, ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, creed, or religion, or, and this is part of the new section as well, or sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy, be subjected to any discrimination in his or her, that's changing to their, civil rights by any other person or by any firm, corporation, or institution, or by the state or any agency or subdivision of the state pursuant to law. This is added. Now, this part is added. Nothing in this section shall invalidate or prevent the adoption of any law, regulation, program, or practice that is designed to prevent or dismantle discrimination on the basis of a characteristic listed in this section. Nor shall any characteristic listed in this section be interpreted to interfere with, limit, or deny the civil rights of any person based upon any other characteristic identified in this section. So basically, it will amend the act to boil it down to a little less government legalese. Based on, it's adding ethnicity, national origin, age, national origin, that's an important one, origin, age, disability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, as well as reproductive health care and autonomy. So if you vote yes to these protections, they'll put those protections in the New York State Constitution. If you vote no, it leaves those protections out of the state constitution, which those just, I don't want to reread the whole thing, but it will just delete those words, those ones that I emphasized. It will still have no person shall be because of race, color, creed, or religion. That will be, and it will keep his or her. So that will still be in there. It just will not add. So if you vote no, it will not add to that ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. After reading it like that, I realized I could be one of the people that read at the end of the disclaimer at the end of medication commercials. So that is, I'll put it this way. If you want me to boil it down a little further, when I was doing the Steuben County Fair at the Republican booth, they had signs up that said vote no, if that eases your decision making. So those that comment so frequently, and we appreciate it, that are not what you call Republicans, or Republican fans, or Trump fans, you can take that for what it's worth as well. Okay, yesterday I brought you the story of John Kirby doing what we all dread, and perhaps have all done, which is hit reply all and realizing that you said something in that email that should not have been seen by all. Except for his was really despicable. He sent out a reply all email that said, essentially, we don't have to, well, no, I'll quote it here in a second. But when he sent it out, one of the people on that reply all chain was a Fox News reporter. So the New York Post editorial board has put this together, and if you didn't join us right at the top of the program yesterday, let me fill you in. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby accidentally told the truth about the Biden-Harris view of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. When members of the armed forces criticize you, arrogantly double down. So if you have that community, those that were in the armed forces, if they criticize you, arrogantly double down. Quote, this was what was in the email. Obviously no use in responding. A handful of vets, indeed, and all of one stripe. Oh, they're all Republicans. They don't deserve answers. Or I don't even know Republicans. They're all just outraged over how the withdrawal from Afghanistan went. It was a disaster. Cost 13 American lives. So they're all of one stripe, meaning they don't like us. Just a handful. Obviously, we don't have to respond. No, I don't even have to. I don't want to paraphrase it. Obviously, no use in responding. A handful of vets, indeed, and all of one stripe. smirked Kirby in a note he accidentally CC'd to a reporter, and of all reporters, a Fox News reporter, referring to criticism from 4 veterans slamming him and his bosses. This is the attitude taken by a White House that utterly botched our withdrawal from a key geostrategic hotspot, by a cadre of political careerists who let Afghanistan fall to a bloodthirsty terrorist enemy and saw 13 service members killed in a terrorist attack on Kabul airport. No use in responding. How pathetic. And it's only appropriate that Kirby would blow himself up like this via a mistaken reply all. The story of administration incompetence in a nutshell. Kirby's boss, Joe Biden, has displayed an identical callousness. Checking his watch during the ceremony for the soldiers, his failed policies got killed. Keeping the family of those honored dead at a distance. Insanely blaming his predecessor, Donald Trump, for the carnage he himself caused. And then not just, I want to also say it's Harris. You know, I think we're making a big mistake. Actually, one of Harris's surrogates said just yesterday during an interview, no, anything Biden did, Harris had a hand in. So keep that in mind. Kirby's plainly rattled by the House Foreign Services Committee's release of a damning 350-page report on the catastrophe, the result of a multi-year probe that places blame squarely on the shoulders, of the president he serves. But the correct response would be humility, not cold, partisan indifference to the human costs of Biden's failures. Yes, partisan. Kirby's line plainly implies that the vets would be worth responding to if they had different politics, if they supported Biden-Harris. That's the moral core of Biden-Harris. Politics above all. It's killing Americans at home and abroad, and a Harris victory in November will ensure only continuing that ugliness. Okay. I wanted to give you that update from yesterday. I also wanted to respond to those great comments from viewers. Keep them coming in. Most of them were from after yesterday's show. As I mentioned, Matt McCarthy will be our guest a little bit later on. I'm guessing most people are already there, but if you're headed to Watkins Glen, maybe you're from out of town. I know last year we had some people stop by the studio and say they watched me in the morning as they were headed up to Watkins. They're from out of town. If you're headed to Watkins, have a fun weekend. It is NASCAR weekend. A little bit later, feels a little weird, but I like it, being in that playoff. So if you're going, have a fun time, safe time. We'd love to hear from you. Comment at that number on the bottom of the screen. Let us know what kind of time you had up at the track. All right, let's take our first break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us. Comment from a viewer. Sounds like the Democrat agenda is being added to the Constitution. That's in reference to the New York State Constitution, and that, and it was very boring to read, but I think it's important to read, of that proposal that you will be voting on in November. So thank you to the viewer who originally asked about it. It is one that may catch you off guard, so we'll make sure I even put it in my drawer here to make sure that we bring it up as it nears November. Boy, we got a lot of comments coming in. We'll get to those in a minute. So Trump has said there will be no third debate, as you are well aware at this point. I like the way he puts it in his Truth Social post. When a prize fighter loses a fight, the first words out of his mouth are, "I want a rematch," which is very true. When you think about it, when the mic hits him, I thought we were up on points. I want a rematch, that type of thing. Polls clearly show that I won the debate against Comrade Kamala Harris, the Democrats' radical left candidate, on Tuesday night, and she immediately called for a second debate. There is a point there. I've heard a lot of people make this, that when someone does call for a second debate or calls for another debate, it normally means that they don't feel confident that they won. Now, of course, she was celebrating. We saw it after the fact, and she continues to celebrate. But I do think there is a good point there that why would she call for a second debate? Now, she was maybe doing it to show confidence, but boy, we did so good, because they didn't think she was going to do good, that she did so good that she wants to keep them going. I don't really know the mindset behind it, but I do now understand why Trump is saying no. Because if you look at it, according to their internal polling, they gained 2 percentage points, I believe, in some in swing states, after the debate. Trump said that Harris and President crooked Joe Biden have destroyed our country with millions of criminals and mentally deranged people pouring into the U.S., totally unchecked and unvetted, and with inflation bankrupting our middle class. Everyone knows this and all the other problems caused by Kamala and Joe. It was discussed in great detail during the first debate with Joe and the second debate with Comrade Harris. She was a no-show at the Fox debate and refused to do NBC and CBS. Kamala should focus on what she should have done during the last almost 4-year period. There will be no third debate, all caps. Now, CNN has to read conspiracy theory into it. Well, he says he doesn't want it now. Following the Philadelphia debate, Trump defended his performance. See how biased the media can be? Defended his performance. Is that the way you put it? Would the statement said, well, Harris was at a rally where she defended her performance? Unbelievable. They're so obvious and forthright about how biased they are. There's no need to even hide it anymore. They have said in no uncertain terms that they'll do anything in the media to get whoever elected over Trump. So again, Stephen Collinson decides to go conspiratorial and says, why Trump ditched a debate rematch for now. Donald Trump's refusal to take part in another presidential debate with Democrat nominee Kamala Harris marks a significant moment in the campaign and hints at vulnerability for a political career built on the foundation of his television fame and mastery of stagecraft. And this is so cliche. So what he's doing, and Chelsea Clinton did it too. There's a name blast from the past, right? Chelsea Clinton doing it too, where, oh, he's scared. He's hurt. It's so trite. It's so cliche. Again, I know I said it a million times on this program, but you could write these articles for them. The great showman just turned his back on tens of millions of viewers, Stephen Collinson said, trying to goad him. The ex-president says he doesn't need a rematch because he won Tuesday night's debate, despite overwhelming reviews saying he bombed against the vice president who outdid a former reality star. Welcome to the fair and unbiased reporting of CNN. But there's an alternative possible explanation that Trump, who normally can't resist a chance to dominate the small screen, doesn't relish a repeat of a showdown in which he was unprepared and unfocused and squandered his best chance to take down his opponent in a cliffhanger election. The former president might be right to mitigate the risk. After all, polls show he's in a dead heat with Harris in a race in which the fundamentals on top voter priorities like the economy and immigration may favor him. So yes, he's scared. He bombed. Okay, well, it wasn't him who called for the second debate, technically third debate. And again, why would Trump, to his point, not do a debate that isn't at this point going to be on Fox News or at least some friendly outlet? I mean, Harris refuses to even do interviews and press conferences in front of a friendly team. And then she demands ABC, which, and thank you to everybody who keeps commenting and sending in after the program. There are so many connections at ABC. Well, the moderator herself was in the same sorority, not the same year, but the same sorority as Harris. There's so many connections to Harris. Of course she was going to do ABC. That was such a friendly territory where, and again, it's starting to sound cliche, where it was 3-on-1 with the moderators and Harris versus Trump. So Trump gave an interview exclusively to the New York Post. We're going to talk about that. But we have a lot of comments coming in, and I do have to take a break. I don't want to run too late this morning. But like I said, it's just so pathetic when you can beat these people to the punch. Chelsea Clinton saying he's scared, and he should be. And this, of course, is on The View. So they all laugh along, and this is just great. This is what Whoopi Goldberg says, just to get your blood boiling before break. He doesn't seem to want to commit to another round. This is before he announced there wouldn't be another debate. Vice President Harris is saying, listen, I'm up for another debate, but does he need to do another debate? I mean, they all for weeks called her dumb and stupid, and she didn't have a brain in her head. So Chelsea Clinton says he knows he lost, and he knows he lost his cool. He knows she got under his skin, and he knows she is on the right side of what most Americans want our country to be. Did you know that? That most people in this country want what we've had for the last 4 years, according to Chelsea Clinton. I'll ask you that question. Would you like to keep this train a-rolling? She added, he's scared and he should be. That's when Joy Behar's so happy. He's very scared. Elisa Farah Griffin said the last 24 hours has been a bit of a MAGA reality check, similar to how some Democrats felt after President Biden didn't do well as they expected in the debate. So now this is akin to Biden. Not only did he bomb, according to Stephen Collinson from CNN, but he also was akin to the performance that Biden had that ultimately made him drop out. Okay. If you're a Trump supporter, you probably live on a steady diet of clips he puts out where he may still seem like the strong, tough guy they like. But their own eyes saw that he was unable to talk about just basic policy. Who was it that wasn't able to talk about basic policy? It was Trump. Is that right? So no criticism whatsoever of Kamala Harris. As a matter of fact, was it in the Stephen Collinson piece? There is a Stephen Collinson piece about it where... yeah, no, this one isn't it. But where they say her campaign is focused more on impact than policy. So these next month and a half is going to be focused on impact by Harris, not policy. So showmanship. She doesn't, look, she copied and pasted most of her policies from Biden on her website, and they're all like Trump jokes, see spot run. There's no real substance there. We're going to talk about it, but I have so many comments coming in, and here I say I'm not going to run late, and then I run late. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Coming up a little bit later on, we'll be talking with acting Steuben County and Family Court judge and candidate for that same position, Matt McCarthy. He'll be joining us in the next hour. Now, I had mentioned that he was going to be on and his opponent was going to be on Monday. We had to reschedule. She will be on next week, and I will keep you updated on that. Something came up in the schedule, but she will be on. That's what our goal is here on Frankly Speaking. Okay. Some comments from viewers. This one from Ken. Kirby's copy all response just confirms again that the legacy media is nothing but the megaphone for the Democratic Party. I would bet that every morning emails like this go out to get the talking points of the Democrat operatives, Sands, Fox, or other conservative media. I would agree totally. I've seen, well, listen, there's emails that go to, and honestly go to conservative outlets. They just probably see the propaganda that are literally referenced as talking points. So yes, you're exactly right. Kirby's was just a honest reaction to how he saw the others, the people that don't support the Biden-Harris campaign. So what his was more candid than the official quote-unquote talking points. But you're exactly right. Ken continues, Trump should do another tag team style debate, but this time Dana White should be in his corner. That's funny. I'm with most people. I don't see the reason for the debate. I don't think it's he's scared or he did so bad he's afraid that he's gonna. Come on. Harris was the one that called for another debate instantly. And I think to Trump's point, as someone who's watched boxing his whole life, that's what the boxer does when they lose. You don't see someone who just won the heavyweight championship of the world putting on that belt saying, I want a rematch. Okay. Oh, and by the way, before I continue, and there's so many great points here from viewers. Before I continue, the vice presidential debate, which is kind of getting pushed to the side. I asked the other day, I said, I'm not even positive it's still going on. Well, according to reports, it is coming up on October 1st. Okay, so that's just to fill you in. We'll get more information as it nears, but I look forward to that one. All right, comment from a different viewer. Friday the 13th, keep your lights on. Yeah, no kidding, right? I should have checked. Are we still good? Boy, it's been a hectic week, huh? Wednesday, if you're not familiar, right after the debate, all excited to talk about the debate. 40 minutes in, and Market Street lost its power. All right, but thank you. Yes, I cross your fingers. Kamala, many reports say she was wearing audio earrings, Nova H1 audio pearl earrings. If true, this is unreal. What is your opinion? Well, I did see the manufacturers of those, or one similar to that, said it is crazy how much they look like the product they produce, and they said they'd be happy to make some for Trump. Here's my opinion on that. I don't think they were feeding her stuff in the ear. This is why I say this, and you can disagree with me wholeheartedly. I've been on the business end of that with people talking in your ear, and I think it makes, and maybe it's just me, it makes it impossible to have a coherent sentence. It's like when you're on the phone with somebody and somebody's like, tell them this or tell her that, and you're like, like that. That's what it feels like to me. Now, that's not to say in her 2 to 3 week preparation that she maybe didn't learn it, because I know there's a lot of newscasters that use it and seem to be okay at it. But even that, sometimes you see that kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't really have an opinion, though. I do think it's very funny that the makers of the audio earrings said that they'd make something for Trump. I thought that was funny. So whatever your opinion is, I'm fine with. I don't know. I really don't. They showed clips of Kamala leaving the 9/11 ceremony early after crowds chanted, "We need Trump." She was angry and it showed. I did not see that video. I didn't. I'll have to look for it. Thank you. Sad was Biden had no idea where he was or who he was or who was around him, and he just did not know where he was at 9/11. So check 9/11. I saw that where he said we need to do 9/11. Some weird statement like that. That was a weird couple days for Biden, as he's getting back out on the quote-unquote campaign trail. Not his campaign, though, remember. Man, just one insult to injury after another. But I think that's why you see the kind of wacky Biden where, here, give me your Trump hat, I'll put it on. Or take pictures with all these kids wearing Trump regale. So I'll check for those videos. Thank you. Lastly, we do not need a debate. She lies, so no more debating is good. This is great. A great week, frankly. So glad for your truth program. Well, thank you. It has been a great week. Well, Wednesday wasn't. Wednesday was just weird, losing the power. But I think Nick Langworthy did a fantastic job yesterday. We got Matt McCarthy coming up today. We've got guests lined up all next week as well. It's getting that exciting time as we near election, really near election. All right, another comment. This viewer thinks it would be counterproductive unless the debate is done with Fox or other unbiased media or Trump-friendly outlet. Yeah, because and this is not just Trump-Harris. This has been throughout the history of Republicans that we always cave and say, no, I guess, yeah, we'll go to ABC, we'll go to CBS where they hate us because we want the opportunity to debate. And there's never one inclination, not even from the second a candidate on the Democrat Party starts their campaign, that they'll ever do a debate on Fox. So I'm with you. I think ABC was so biased that alone makes the argument that Trump cannot get a fair shake at a debate. Trump telling the New York Post he just doesn't think there's any need for it. We just don't think that there's any need for it. We've done two, one against Biden, one against Comrade Kamala. I did well. I did really well. This was an interview exclusively with the New York Post. The debate polls, every single poll had us winning it. The GOP campaign had previously argued, well, skip that part. There's no debate on the 25th, he told the Post. Nothing has been arranged. I think she had the questions. So Trump believes Kamala Harris was already given the questions ahead of time. And I think that the anchors were a disgrace to American journalism. You saw the way that was done. That was ridiculous. They didn't challenge her on all of those things that they knew were false. Yeah, and there's so many examples of that. I mean, I think right off the jump when she brought up Project 2025, that they didn't fact check her there. You knew what kind of long night it was going to be. But I pose this because I know there's a lot of viewers that don't like Trump, that do like Harris. And we welcome you to Frankly Speaking, like we welcome everyone. When you watch that, even though you like Harris, is there any part of you that says, if Harris was so good, why does it have to be 3-on-1? If Harris is so good, why do the moderators have to jump in to help her and goad Trump into taking the bait or fact-checking him or pushing him to answer further when they never did that for her? Wouldn't it have been great if they said, well, you didn't really answer the question when they asked her about arguably the most important issue is, why are you flip-flopping from your positions back in 2019? Wouldn't that have been nice? But do you not care? I mean, I'm not asking this. This is not a loaded question. Do you just not care? Is it, I kind of like it. It makes it a little bit better, gives us the upper hand, stack the deck a little bit. That's what it's all about, winning. Is that the attitude? Is it, well, Harris is a good candidate, so she didn't need that help, but they just took it upon themselves. I really don't know the answer because I've, as a Republican can never say the cards have been stacked in their favor in a presidential debate, or really any debate for that matter. So I would not know what that feeling's like. All right, let's take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So many great comments. I will say this may be the best week of comments in our year and a half history. Not just the comments, the quality, which are always great quality, just the amount all week long. So let's go right to them. Harris couldn't handle an earpiece. In my 20s as a DJ, I could simulcast the news out of an earpiece from Binghamton in real time. Took all my calm, concentration, and practice to do it. I doubt Kamala could. Yeah, and think about it too, as a DJ, I was never a DJ, but I worked in talk radio. You don't have to also look like you don't have an earpiece. You know, you're reading it and you're listening to it, and it's still very tough to do. So yes, there are some people that can do it, but I think a whole debate long. Now, I'm not saying there couldn't be an earpiece scenario where it's, you know, quickly saying abortion, so she knows to bring up that, maybe. But no, when it comes to doing a whole debate or getting when the questions come out, getting some type of answer, I don't think. You can disagree all you want. Please keep the comments coming in. That's just not my takeaway from that. And a different comment. Miss Harris's theatrical expressions are absolutely sickening. I found them so over-practiced. And so, as Tulsi Gabbard said, I think she got training from the Hollywood actors and the people from Hollywood that are friends, giving her all that big money. Yeah, they were over the top. It reminded me, and this is not insulting necessarily, but it reminds me of if you were ever in a high school debate where they tell you, okay, now you move your hands here, you do that. It was that to an extreme level. And some of them, whatever, you know, but that thing, that one was the one where it was so rehearsed that it was just kind of distracting, because they said, undoubtedly, that, listen, the split screen was horrible for Biden. Horrible. One of the reasons why he's no longer the nominee. So we have to kind of over-prepare her. She has to, because the mics are muted, she has to use her face, almost like in the old silent movies, to show her expression of disdain or anger or rolling her eyes and kind of scoffing without being able to do it because of the mic. So it was like, you know, again, like I would say, like the old silent movies. But continuing with what that viewer has to say. And what about there's no wars, no one's being shot at? Yeah, can you believe she said that? And that's something that the media, again, going back to the media, has not highlighted. That wasn't, it's so reminiscent of Biden saying the same thing in debate number 1. So are they at this point trying to gaslight, which I know that term's way overused, but is that what their goal is, to kind of to convince people that no one's in harm's way? Because as this viewer says, what about the sailors that sat on the Mediterranean and were shot at every single day and gone for 9-month deployment? Yeah, thank you for the comment. I agree. Another overlooked, well, lie. I mean, if they can say that about everything that Trump says, even when he does his Trump generalities, why is it that there's this decorum on the other side? Even Jake Tapper. Now, you're not going to see me agree with Jake Tapper from CNN very often. Even Jake Tapper called out Kamala Harris for dodging the questions. But remember, if you read what we brought to you earlier, it was Trump that couldn't show policy. And that's why he's scared to debate. Jake Tapper took Harris to task, well, as much as a CNN host can. Tapper said Harris was less than forthcoming about her policies, beginning the debate by punting the first question on the economy. Yeah, she could not even tell you, like I think any candidate could, that, not truthfully, but every candidate, if they're asked, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, and you were in office, you're going to say yes. You're going to have some throwaway statistic, misleading information. She could not even answer and tell you and try to convince you that you're better off these last 4 years. And then he said it went on from there. Despite the economy being the #1 issue facing the country, the sitting vice president generally reverted to talking points about a few of her policy proposals. Even Harris allies today are saying that she needs to talk more about what she will do for Americans if elected. But they've already said that her campaign is focused on kind of the impact of her message, not the actual policy, not the actual specifics, because she doesn't have any. How do you run on fixing something that you created? So I think when and Jake Tapper has a point here where, yes, people may at some point, but they just have to run out the clock, but may at some point say, all right, we need some specifics here. I mean, I don't think they will. I don't think it's going to come to that. I think they are just going to run out the clock. But they might give some. They're not giving interviews. The media's fine with that. She doesn't have to answer questions. The fact that ABC, the moderators, and how biased they were, didn't go back and say, you didn't answer the question on the policy flip-flops, which is arguably the biggest deal that could be asked of her. Because remember, in 2019, what she said, she has done a complete 180. So what will she believe if she gets in office day one? Will she have another flip-flop back to 2019? Will she flip-flop completely from... I mean, these are fair questions that the media will not answer. So when that does happen once, don't get giddy, don't get excited, but you at least got to give Jake Tapper credit for calling it out. The host then noted another major question she avoided answering, saying she also dodged on the border. And this was, and we mentioned it yesterday, this was one of the biggest, I guess, frustrations that I had with Trump. That instead of like we did with Biden, step back and let Biden keep digging, in this scenario, he kind of would interject or not say, hey, you didn't answer the question, those type of things. And the moderators are more than happy to let her move on from the questions that would be damaging and go back to abortion or wherever the case may be. When asked how she might have managed the crisis better than President Biden, Harris began saying, quote, so I'm the only person on the stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And as Tapper said, okay, that wasn't the question. Yep, that's not what ABC should have asked that, right? Well, that wasn't the question. Nope, ABC, again, willing to pile on, gang up. And the worst part is we say this after every debate. This one, though, I think was exceptionally atrocious. But we say that, and nothing changes. ABC right now, the moderators are patting themselves on the back. They did their, do you know how many cocktail parties they're going to? Do you know how many cool events they're invited to now? They're heroes amongst their elite liberal bubble. So they don't see any repercussion. There's no punishment. ABC Big Brass, who are good friends with Kamala Harris, aren't going to come in and say, oh, you did a bad job. No, they don't care. That's their ultimate goal. Their goal isn't to have any kind of credibility. It's to bring down not just Trump, Republican presidents. So because when it's not Trump, it's going to be the same game plan against any Republican, because every Republican is going to be a threat to democracy. Every Republican is the worst president we've ever had. Continuing, when asked how she would break through the Israel-Hamas war stalemate, Harris said this, quote, we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. And as Tapper said, okay, but again, how? Tapper, a vehement critic of Donald Trump, cautioned he wasn't equating the two candidates. While by no means are we equating the two performances last night, it's also true that at times both Trump and Harris fell short of giving straightforward answers to questions about how exactly they would run the country. So see, he still has to do his due diligence. He still has to say, no, guys, I'm not, listen, I still want my job here, CNN. I'm just saying I would have liked some answers, but it's okay. It's all right. Trump's bad. You know, that's why they had to fact check, because his lies are worse than Harris's lies. That was one of the arguments that was being made, not by Tapper, but by others. Yes, I know I'm running late. Stay with us. Seems to be a trend here this morning and as the last couple of days. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Frankly Speaking. All right, comment from a viewer, and I don't understand it, so that's why I bring it up. Concepts, Frank. Concepts. Well, please explain. Concepts on what? Is that saying that Harris's policies are just concepts? I don't know. But thank you. See how we read the comments? And I mentioned this earlier. ABC debate moderator Lindsay Davis was a member of the same storied sorority as Kamala Harris. Just more and more connections. being made from the moderators. And again, the moderators are in no way, shape, or form in any type of trouble for this bias. If anything, may get promoted. I mean, you think David Muir is going to get any pushback from ABC brass for that kind of bias? I think was evident. And again, I pose this question to, even if you're, maybe you hate Trump and you like Harris, or even if you're kind of maybe one of these voters on the fence, you're not sure where you're going to go. When you see something that bias, what is your reaction? Because I've just never been on the other side where it's, wow, all of those moderators really ganged up on that Democrat. So I think it's so biased that I've heard from Democrats, which is anecdotal. I don't like to reference that specifically, but I've even seen it in the news where they'll mention that Trump thinks it was biased, but they're not going to talk about the number of fact checks that he received and the 0 fact checks that she received, those type of things. So they know the bias is there, and I think they just want that not to be the story. And proving my point, what the story is, it was so interesting. I turned on the news this morning getting ready for work. And if you recall, I said after the debate in the last couple of days that the debate performance by Trump was a scenario where Trump said enough things going down a rabbit hole that they can focus on that and make that the story, and then talk about Harris's momentum and how that debate really pushed her forward, and she's back to the honeymoon period and she's doing great. And it was predictable. It's not like I made any gigantic statement that was earth-shattering. But so I turned on the news. I won't mention what outlet. Obviously not Fox. I was flipping around. And it was, that's exactly what happened. They're going, well, there's no evidence of pets being eaten. And they'll show the clip of Trump. And we reached out to the town manager and they said no evidence. But Harris is on the campaign trail today, coming back from that momentum after that great debate performance. It was something like that. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. They might not have said great debate performance, but after that debate performance, she's traveling and she's not wowing the crowds. And it was exactly as we all knew it would be. They have a negative to focus on with Trump and an extreme positive to focus on with Harris. So no real surprise. All right. We're going to talk a little bit about Harris's campaign. We got a couple things here about New York, too, that I really hope we can get to. And a piece here, and it's something that we've said on this program before. It's not always, the bias is not always what the media is reporting. Like in that instance, it's biased because it's all negative Trump, positive Harris. But it's also what they don't report on. Like very often with Trump, what they won't report on, or like what we talk about with the debate, they won't report on the bias. So it's a really good piece. I hope we can get to it. And I probably shouldn't keep promoting it in case we don't. Stay with us. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. Last break of hour number 1. I think I'm starting to agree with that viewer. It says this should be 3 hours or more. Nah, let's keep it at 2. Yeah, for now. Stay with us. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Boy, hour number 1 went quick. So Kamala Harris was at as the New York Post reports, a lie-filled North Carolina rally where she accused Trump of wanting to cut Social Security. It's such an old bag of tricks and lies. She said the Republican presidential nominee intends to cut payments when he actually has called for no cuts and for the elimination of taxes on the entitlement. Keep that in mind. He's not only not vowed to cut them, he said there would be no cuts, and he wants no taxes on your Social Security. But that's not what Kamala Harris pushed. He intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. Is that knee-jerk, I wonder, for Democrats that run for president, or for really most office, you just say it. Not true, but you just, we'll go with it, and the media will run with it. The Trump campaign's official platform, ratified at the Republican convention in July, flouts long-standing calls for fiscal conservatives to slim the social safety net, saying the 45th president would fight for and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes to the retirement age. Trump plans to eliminate taxes on Social Security benefits, which would effectively boost the values of those benefits. That was not included in the party platform, but is a common campaign trail pledge. Now, Harris has not stated her position on Trump's call to eliminate taxes on Social Security payouts, though she has endorsed his separate proposal to eliminate taxes on tipped incomes. Anyway, I don't want to go through all of her rally. There's no sense there because we are out of time for this hour. That is amazing. When we come back, we're going to talk about Harris a little bit more, and then we're going to talk about Trump, some New York State issues, as I said, in the next hour. Acting Steuben County and Family Court judge for Steuben County, and he's running for that position for another term. Well, he's running for a term there. You'll understand after we talk to him. He'll be on here in just a little bit. We will have his opponent on. She's going to join us originally Monday. Not an issue, just a scheduling conflict. We're now going to talk to her next week, so she will be on next week. And don't worry, that is a competitive race, so we will have both candidates on throughout the election season. And as I always say, if you know someone running for office and they would like to be a part of Frankly Speaking, let me know. Reach out, and I will have them reach out to me, just so you know that's kind of the rule. It just makes it so it's fair and not biased. So if you want to be on the show and you're saying, why hasn't Frank called me? I don't do that, and it's not any kind of ego thing or anything like that. It's just so I can be fair, because you just don't know all the candidates always running. So it's just an easier way to say, okay, here, Frank, I'm running. Can I be on the show? And then it's not like, oh, you're always picking Republicans or you're always picking Democrats. That's not the case. So I would love to hear from you if you're running for office, and we'll have you on the program as November nears. So you see the number on the bottom of the screen. That's the best way to reach me. All right, we've got a busy 1 hour ahead. I don't know if we'll be able to get to all of it, but we're going to try our hardest. Matt McCarthy in the next hour. Next week, I'm going to be talking to a group there's an Alzheimer's walk coming up, and it's at Watkins Glen International, which I think is really interesting. So you actually walk around the track. I have created a team that will be doing that. I'll be telling you about it from Big Fox here. We're going to be walking, so I'll tell you about that. I know we just come off the heels of me talking about the great organization, the Salvation Army, and having you donate to them. So I'm not going to push you too hard on this, but if you want to help us cross that finish line, so to speak, there'll be opportunities. And hey, anybody headed to the track this weekend, have a fun, safe time. Oh, we've got so many comments coming in. All right, I'm rambling on, trying to kill the last 10 seconds before we go to break. Join us in the next hour. You see the number on the bottom of the screen. Throw some waves my way, and more importantly, throw the comments. It's been a great week of comments, and thank you to everybody who's been on the program as a guest or has commented on the week, because it's been a busy news week. And thank you to Congressman Nick Langworthy for joining us yesterday, and thank you to Matt McCarthy, who we'll hear from in just a little bit. There we go. I've killed the 10 seconds. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. I wonder if there we go. I thought my wave counter was broken. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on historic Market Street in the Gafford district of Corning. Next weekend already, coming up on Harvest Fest. So many comments from viewers. How about this? Wasn't there something about Biden-Harris dipping into the Social Security funds? I'm not sure. I don't remember that, but probably. It seems like people dip into those funds quite frequently. Though when it comes to cuts, the last cut comes in. Listen to this, and I found this because I searched with what you had to say. President Biden and his fellow Democrats are accusing Republicans of wanting to cut Social Security benefits. Now, this is a piece from back in 2023. But in 1983, then Senator Biden and 25 other Senate Democrats, along with 163 House Democrats, provided the largest majority of votes to pass the last cut to Social Security benefits. So if cutting Social Security benefits is a scandal, then Biden's guilty. That's the opinion piece. But I know, we're running against Harris. Even Harris said, hey, you're running against me during the debate. And here is such a nice comment to kick off hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. I just want to say thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you to everybody watching, and thank you to everybody commenting. That's so sweet. So thank you. How Harris aims to keep drawing eyeballs as the hard campaigning begins. Oh, now the hard campaigning begins. That'll be something to watch. Well, how do you keep drawing in eyeballs when you don't do interviews, you don't do press conferences, you just do rallies? So that most likely like-minded people, right? I mean, that's one of the things they say about Trump rallies. I don't know. Yeah, aims to keep drawing eyeballs. Well, maybe give an interview. Maybe do a press conference. But this is the piece, and who was it by? It wasn't by Stephen Collison, so I apologize. It's from CNN, which Stephen Collison's from, but this is actually Edward Isaac Dover. Harris headquarters is focusing on impact more than policy. Never has anything been said in such a nonchalant way that has such an important meaning behind it. Yeah, never mind substance. We're looking for quantity over quality. At campaign headquarters, aides are already working toward more appearances, like Harris's online conversation next week with Oprah Winfrey. Wait, towards more appearances? Does that mean like campaign, like rally appearances and visits? Because it doesn't mean media appearances. Instead of any big speeches or more policy rollouts like her economic plan, unless the campaign sees ways to leverage those into grabbing more attention. So never mind policy rollouts, which, by the way, I like how they say more policy rollouts. After 50 days, so Sunday night, they finally put her policies up on her website, and they're as generic as possible. But no more of those unwieldy policy rollouts that we've heard so often from the Harris campaign. Yeah, Harris advisors are running into limits on the calendar. Unless they succeed in goading Trump into accepting a second debate, which we heard last night they're not. The only big event left before Election Day is the Tim Walz, J.D. Vance vice presidential debate on October 1st. David Plouffe, who used to work for Obama, is leading the push among Harris advisors for breakthrough moments and innovative appearances. Harris and many around her tend to be dismissive of the value of traditional media. No, they don't. They know they're not dismissive of the value of traditional media. They know they've got that in the bag. They know that the traditional media has sold themselves out, and that's why maybe they don't have a value. Sold themselves out and has become her campaign wing. A part of her campaign. So why would she waste her time, maybe set herself up for failure with a softball generic interview and where she accidentally gets into word salad? Why would she do that when she can get all the positive attention from the traditional outlets, all while buying ads, pushing untruths to paint her as something she isn't? I mean, that's their campaign. They believe they get more of a boost from putting her in situations like hugging voters during a brief Sunday stop at a spice store in Pittsburgh. Okay, then if the media really cared about their job and said, we should be getting interviews, we should be having press conferences, we should learn about the nominee who's never received a single vote to be in this position. If anything, that deserves more scrutiny. We demand answers. They should stop covering her hugging and her stops at these restaurants and her rallies. They won't do that, though, because, again, going back to what they're saying in her campaign, they are dismissive of the value of traditional media. They're not dismissive of the value of it. They're dismissive of the media. They know there's a value in it. They know they don't have to do it because they know what you think the moderators from ABC and the people at ABC are going to say, okay, we're not getting an interview. We're never going to do these press junkets with you where we walk around and take these pictures of you and it's all, sunshine and rainbows. They're never going to back away from that to send her a message. They are doing the most work. And think of how insulting that is. Talk about the kind of the term in politics, useful idiot. Think of how insulting that is, because they're going to continue to do the dirty work of trying to keep her up and having all the momentum in the world until November. All while they insult her in articles like this, or all while she insults them, tongue-tied, in outlets like this, where they're dismissive of the value of traditional media. So the media that fawns all over her and does everything to carry her water, they're dismissive. They have no value. They see no value in it. Wow, what an insult. These people are being used, and they do not care. And then, of course, it goes on. The piece goes on to insult Trump and his supporters, and pretty typical. Okay. Now, Harris's co-chair, Mitch Landry, stated that while Harris is her own person, she helped Joe Biden do all the things that were done in the Biden time that she was there. And I think she's proud of that. Oh, that's kind of a weird way of putting it. All the time that she was there. Wasn't that his full term? Or is he trying to disavow Harris from like back when he was in the Senate or something? What a weird way of putting that. Harris is her own person, so they get to say that. And remember, this goes back to the point we've been making too. When she makes these policy statements that she's for fracking or whatever the case may be, most of them are coming from anonymous campaign sources being posted on her Twitter account. She's not saying them directly. And when ABC asked her about the flip-flops, she didn't respond and they didn't call her on it. But continuing. She helped President Joe Biden do all the things that were done in the Biden time that she was there. And I think she's proud of that. For people who didn't like Joe Biden, one of the reasons they didn't like him was not because of his policies. One of the reasons they thought was he was too old. And they said that over and over again. So they loved his policies, but it was too old. That's why they disliked him. I think Joe Biden is going to go down in history. This again, Mitch Landrieu, Harris Walz campaign co-chair, as being one of the most consequential presidents in the history of America. And she was his vice president. And she helped him do all the things that were done in the Biden time that she was there. Does that mean when she was in the office? What does that when she was there mean? Because she's been with him. It's just like when they say J.D. Vance is trying to tether Harris to the Biden administration. Aren't you instantly tethered? Aren't you instantly tied to the administration when it becomes the Biden-Harris campaign? So what does it mean by when the time she was there? Is it going to be one of those things where, oh, yeah, that was a disaster. That policy by Biden was a disaster, but she was on vacation that week, or she was out of the office at a doctor's appointment. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking that. I'm sorry, I'm overthinking that. But by the time she was there, anyway, I think she's proud of that. But nobody could be unclear or should be unclear on the fact that she was her own person. That is the point that she was trying to make to Donald Trump. For people who don't like Joe Biden, one of the reasons they don't like him was not because of his policies. One of the reasons was because he was too old. And they said that over and over again. And by the way, they think that about Donald Trump as well. And so what Kamala Harris is doing by her very presence and by her skills is telling people this is time for a new way forward. And I think that there's a sense in America amongst Republicans, Democrats, and independents that we're so tired of the old song that Donald Trump sings about how bad America is, how terrible everything is, having to wake up every day that he was president thinking, what the heck did that guy do today? And what's he going to do to hurt us tomorrow? That they want to turn the page. And I think they're painting a broad brush with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, obviously, on that issue. But there are many policies that Joe Biden supported that we talked about, many that are very, very favorable to the public. So it's apparently not just Kamala Harris that is prone to word salads. Mitch Landrieu also responded to a question, and it isn't amazing. All her surrogates are out doing media, but again, they don't value traditional media. So why even have these people out? Why have Pete Buttigieg and those type of people out in the media if there is no value in it? I mean, if I was in the traditional media and I saw that statement, I would say, okay, there's no more coverage. We don't need this. As much as we've done for you. I mean, it's kind of like Biden when you think about it. Supports and does everything for the Democrat Party for 50 plus years and they stab him in the back. When does he say enough? And you know my theory. It's kind of just a funny, it's not funny. It's just kind of a fun thought process where I think Biden secretly wants Trump to win. And why do I say that? Because then his legacy is secured even more so. Not the George Washington legacy that we hear George Clooney and others say. The real legacy where he could say, I beat Donald Trump once. I was the only one that could beat him. I told you I was the only one that could beat him. Again, you kicked me out, you booted me out, and he won. And you guys couldn't bring Harris across the finish line. I mean, there's got to be something in him, ego-wise, that wants that kind of, even though he doesn't want Trump, probably. He's probably also thinking that it would be a pretty good boost to my ego. Anyway, how did I get on that tangent? Because there's no value in media. It's the same thing. They used Biden, and now they're using the media. Dana Bash says, if you look at the voters who aren't sure who to vote for, and if this, in this crisis of affordability, I call it, is their top concern, what they know about Donald Trump is that they could afford more than when he was president, up until the pandemic, and they don't know what she will bring. Landrieu responded, well, first of all, that's what they think. But of course, that is not accurate. The economy when Donald Trump was president was terrible. To Dana Bash's credit, she said, it's not accurate. If you look at the numbers, but it's how people, oh, no. It's not, oh, I thought she was saying you're not being accurate. No, what was I thinking? Dana Bash saying it's not accurate. So think of what Mr. Landrieu and what Dana Bash are saying to you. Do you remember when it felt like you had more in your bank account? Do you remember when you weren't dreading going to the grocery store, when you maybe even looked forward to it to get your groceries? Do you remember when it didn't break your heart to fill up your gas tank? Maybe you didn't have to cancel vacation because you couldn't afford it. All of those things. Remember when it wasn't that way? You were wrong that whole time. And you know how now you get sick in the pit of your stomach when you go to get your groceries, and you may skimp, you may buy off-brands, you may not have that cut of meat you were hoping for, it may be, hot dogs. Or you say, I guess I'm not going on that vacation because I can't afford the gas. You're not right. It's a boom town right now. We're doing great. So again, you are wrong. Never mind what you felt, what you experienced, what you lived, what you saw. Believe Dana Bash and believe Mitch Landrieu. It's not accurate if you look at the numbers, but it's how people, because she's going to say it's how people feel. So this is the same Dana Bash that got to interview Kamala Harris for a one and only interview since becoming the presumptive nominee, a job when she became nominee that she never got one single vote for. Okay, fine. She even has to, it's not good enough that Mitch Landrieu is saying exactly what she wants. She has to, and I thought, that's why I was dumbfounded. I thought she was saying you're not accurate, but I was forgetting. She was interviewing a Democrat. You don't fact check a Democrat. So she actually had to interrupt and say, yeah, it's not accurate. Folks, if you're watching this, never mind what you felt during the Trump administration, and never mind, you think there was peace and prosperity. And, well, okay, there was peace, but prosperity, no, you were actually hard up. But now these last 4 years, now that is when you have been living high on the hog. Does this work? Please, let me know. Does this work? Landrieu then cut in to say, well, that's what campaigns are about. And that's why you have to go out and tell them. Wow, how condescending. You have to tell these ignorant voters that it was actually bad during the good years of their life. And it's actually really good right now, no matter what your checkings and savings accounts look like. If you even have a checkings and savings, never mind what your grocery receipt looks like. So that's why, how condescending is that, folks? Do you like being talked to that way? That's what campaigns are all about. And that's why you have to go out and tell them, you ignorant rube. That's why she rolled out her plan. And her first thing is to create an opportunity economy and actually to lower costs for people. And the plans to fight the pharmaceutical industry that she and President Biden did. The plan to help people get into homes, to help people with tax credits for childcare. All of those things going forward, we're going to address that concern. But you've got to go out and sell it. Sell us again how great the economy is. And how about more specifics on how you're actually going to pay for these things? More specifics on actually how you're going to get these things finished. Because right now, it's all fluff. There's no substance behind it. We got to take a break. Yes, I'm running late. Doubly late. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We're running really late, and we've got Matt McCarthy coming up in just a moment, but we have a couple comments that I'll read from viewers before we go to a break to prepare for acting Steuben County and Family Court judge and candidate for said position, Matt McCarthy, in just a moment. From Ken, on the New York discrimination law changes, can you expand on your opinion on the national origin inclusion? I did a little research and find it nebulous on how it affects the law. The most simplistic would be discrimination based on the country you or your ancestors came from. But some seem to suggest that it could supersede citizenship and be viewed as discrimination if a company doesn't hire illegals. I think that's a major concern. It is, and that's very... spot on, Ken. There's so many problems with this that it creates a scenario that when it's so open-ended, how can it be misused? That's why Republicans are pushing for the no vote on this to leave these protections out of the state constitution. Because when they say no person shall be because of race, color, this is new, ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, creed was already in there, religion was already in there, or sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy, please consult your doctor. That's what that sounds like. So in that scenario, there's so many open-ended ways to look at that. I think the reason that people are calling this to attention is, what does that mean? So when we go in, what does that mean, national origin? It's a great question, Ken. I don't have the answers for it. And I realized as we near Election Day, Joe Sempolinski, we're going to ask him, being that not just a former congressman, but chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee. He'll have a better explanation than I do, because that was a red flag when I saw national origin. And you will have to vote on that come November, so we're going to give you all the information. Next up, there's a lot of credence for allowing enough rope for the current leadership to hang themselves. Governor Cuomo is a prime example. Yes, you get too big for their britches is a better way to word that, maybe, huh? But I know exactly what you're saying. That, well, anyway, it's a good point. Thank you. Next up, because I'm running late. I would love to see another debate with Fox moderators. Plus, fact-checking both candidates. Big fan, Frank. Keep up what you do. Well, thank you so much. And you're exactly right. I would watch that. I would definitely watch. But again, Trump has to go to hostile places for interviews and debates, where after it's over, after he gives them really the honor of interviewing a former president, they will then call him a fascist and whatever the case may be. So that's what you get if you're Trump for doing an interview in a hostile territory. If you're Harris, you won't even give interviews in a friendly setting. So there's absolutely no way she goes to Fox News and does a debate. And I don't even and here's the problem, if I'm going to be honest with you. If they, let's say they, in a perfect world, they do agree to a debate at Fox. The Fox moderators, just to make sure that they don't look biased at all, will do everything they can. It would almost backfire, and Trump would probably end up getting fact-checked and Harris wouldn't. That's how ridiculous things are. Because I think, listen, ABC had no problem showing how biased they were. That's crystal clear. They're proud of it. They wear it like a feather in their cap. So they were going after it. No shame there. Fox would be too polite. They would say, we don't want to look biased. We want to be fair and balanced. So I don't think it would be the knockdown, drag out with fact checking and tough questions that you think it would. It'd be fair questions. It wouldn't be softballs to Harris, but it wouldn't be some Wild West shootout. That's for sure. And thank you, by the way, for being so kind with being a big fan. I'm a big fan of all the comments from viewers. All right, we've got to take a break. When we come back, Matt McCarthy. He'll be joining us, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Akam, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. And joining me in that studio is the acting Steuben County and Family Court Judge and Corning City Court Judge, Matt McCarthy. Hey, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you again, Frank. Thanks for having me on.
I want to do the disclaimer, and just so people are aware, when I interview a judge candidate, it's quite different because you can't really answer anything.
Correct.
You make my job very difficult.
I'm a very boring interview.
Yes,
I hate to say it.
I know. I can't even ask who, what, when, where, and why. It's too much, I think. So just so people are aware, that's why some of it won't get into specifics. Okay, let's start with the softball background.
So I have been the acting Steuben County and Family Court Judge for the last 10 years, as well as the elected Corning City Court Judge. Prior to that, I was an assistant district attorney and represented children in family court for 12 years.
Wow.
So all those things have led me to where I am today.
Wow. And that's how long have you been acting Steuben County Family Court?
10 years.
It
started
right?
January 1st when I was elected Corning City Court, day one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you know that was part of the job?
I did not.
Okay.
I was made aware by the late Henry Scudder, who was from this area.
Yes, correct.
He was the presiding judge of the 4th Department. And he called me about 2 weeks after I was elected. He said, "You're going to get something in the mail. Congratulations, you're acting county and family court judge." So
that's hilarious. Bonus, I guess,
yes,
right?
I guess. I didn't know what I was in for.
Yeah, it's like when you join some committee, next thing you know, the next week you're treasurer or something.
Yes, yes.
I didn't know that was part of just joining. Okay.
Yep, that's exactly it.
So obviously you've been very busy these last 10 years. Why did you decide to run?
Well, I thought it was time to make that my full-time position.
Yeah. Okay.
Really wanted to focus on the family court and the felony stuff, criminal-wise.
Okay.
I've been doing all of that currently. I've been handling misdemeanor jury trials and even a felony jury trial in the last 10 years, and I've done thousands of family court cases. But I've always felt like I could do more, and I really think by running for this position, and if I'm lucky enough to obtain it, that I could do more for the communities and families in Steuben County.
And for those, because we have very astute viewers, and Joe Sempolinski's on a lot, and we talk about the shape of the races going on in our area, and yours is quite different than how things normally work.
Yes.
Could you explain, just as someone said, wait, I didn't know Judge McCarthy was running for this?
So this year was actually my year to run for Corning City Court Judge,
Right.
so I passed petitions and got on the ballot for Corning City Court Judge. And then Judge Roach retired in May.
Okay.
So that created a vacancy for this position. Okay. And so I was unopposed running for Corning City Court Judge. So that would have been the safer bet.
You said, I'm bored.
Yes, I'm well, and really it does come down to the reason I ran for the Corning City Court job 10 years ago was I wanted to serve the public. I've been very fortunate in my private practice, and meeting people and conducting trials, and I wanted to give back. And so when this position came available, I reached out to Joe Simpolinski, who was the chairman of the committee, and said I'm interested in filling that spot. He obviously, the Republican committee met, and Joe nominated me, and Mayor Buckley from Hornell was the second. So I have support across the county. So it was a good day. That was one of my prouder moments.
And that's with the campaign time and the shortened campaign time. Is it difficult in a county so big as Steuben?
Well, so when I ran for Corning City Court Judge, it was a door-to-door, knock-on-the-door campaign, and we did that starting in April or May.
Okay.
So we knocked on every door in the city at least twice, some of them 4 times. I got to know.
I remember that race well.
Yes.
We talked a lot back then.
Yes, and I was outspent by my opponents in that race by a large margin. But over the course of that time, I knocked on so many doors that I got to know the dogs' names. And I still, walking around the neighborhoods now, I still remember the family names.
Oh, of course.
And again, I would just like to reiterate that I really appreciated everybody's support in that election. It changed my life.
Of course.
So taking from there to now, in a shortened time period in a countywide election, you have to go to more events. You're not really knocking on doors. We're still knocking on doors and whenever we can, but it's mostly just parades and functions and making sure that everyone knows what my experience is.
That's not too bad. Parades, festivals.
Oh no,
it's too bad.
I kind of was dreading it. And my wife and I were talking because we've had a very busy last year, but we decided, once you do it, it's great. I mean, you get to go out and meet a whole bunch of interesting people. This community is very diverse in their opinions and their prerogatives, and I think it's important that judges go out and see that and experience it, as opposed to just having people come before them in a courtroom setting.
Well, I agree, and this is a 10-year term, which some people aren't aware of. I mean, that's a significant length of time. So when you talk to voters at the festivals and at the fairs, what are they saying?
Well, they're all concerned about crime. Bail reform, obviously, is a big issue in this community. People are concerned for their families. Family court-wise, obviously, that's just never going to stop. I mean, there's always going to be the family court. We're disproportionate number of family court cases compared to other counties.
Is that right?
Filed here in Steuben County, yes. So we're very busy with family court. If elected, I plan on 3 days a week being in family court and 2 days a week handling felony matters. So that's the breakdown.
That goes to show you the workload. Wow.
Yeah. And again, the most concern I have, the most concerns that have been relayed to me are mostly just around the fentanyl, drug addiction, mental health. I mean, the bail reform was necessary to an extent, I feel. I think it was an overreaction. It kind of took away a lot of judges' discretion.
Yes.
But the second part of that was supposed to be additional mental health treatment.
Yeah.
And they haven't followed through with that.
No.
So it takes months to get into mental health in Steuben County.
It really doesn't matter who the candidate is or the elected politician is. Fentanyl is a topic, I think, with everybody.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's very scary. I mean, and they're mixing it in, and you never know. Some people say, well, they're drug addicts. Those people have never lost somebody that's been close to them. And unfortunately, the families in Steuben County, those are getting to be fewer and fewer people, because everybody's affected by this.
It really is, unfortunately, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't think any of us know what the answer is, or we wouldn't be right here today.
Yes.
I mean, as simple as that. What issues that you can get into have you seen in the past that that you'll have to face if you get this 10 years? Meaning, is fentanyl the biggest issue you're facing? Family court, probably the...
Well, I would say drug addiction and mental health are the two big issues right now. And sometimes those coincide with each other.
Yeah.
Very often an addict is just self-medicating for a mental health problem. And so we need to address that issue, and I feel that going forward in the next 10 years will be a major thing.
Yeah.
And then family court-wise, unfortunately, those issues don't change. It's custody, visitation matters, and then unfortunately you deal with child abuse and child neglect. in those matters, you know, in all these departments,
Right.
DA's office, public defender's office, Department of Social Services, police, they're all struggling to find people to occupy those positions. So we're trying to do more with less in Steuben County,
Yeah.
and that's the way it's been for the last 10 years, and I can't imagine that that's going to change over the next 10 years.
Well, what would you like to see in the next 10 years? You're acting Steuben County and family court judge. Now you're candidate. What would you like to see?
Well, obviously, I'm going to run a fair and impartial court,
Of course.
but I think it's efficiency. You need to make sure that you're optimizing what resources are available to us here.
Right.
And those can be done through drug court, which I've been part of in one form or another for almost 20 years, either as a prosecutor or a presiding judge over both the county and the city drug court. And that's a very good program. Not perfect, but it's the best thing we have. And so I think that it's really just making the most out of the limited resources that we have and not moving things along.
Right. Now, if you're lucky enough, or either way, win, lose, or draw, what do you do when you think about it? How do you reflect on your time in Corning and being the Corning City Court judge?
It's been the pleasure of my life.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
really, Frank, it was so, I didn't know what I was really getting into probably back then, and that's with 12 years of experience and 9 years as a prosecutor. But it's very different when you put on that robe and the responsibility falls to you. You're not the prosecutor, you're not the defense attorney,
Right.
you're an independent arbiter of facts.
Yeah.
And then you have to, you know, in my line of work, unfortunately, you're making decisions that impact people's lives, and you have to take that responsibility seriously. And so I made a promise 10 years ago that I would uphold the values of the community, the Corning City, and the rest of Steuben County. And I think I've done that in the last 10 years, and I would look to do that in the next 10 years.
So before we go, and I'm going to ask how we can help or to find out more, but the question, this is the gotcha question I've been waiting to ask you. How was the Steuben County Fair?
It was fantastic. I mean, a lot of interesting folks, all walks of life.
Yeah.
Conversations were very enjoyable.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, whether it's the Steuben County Fair or the Hornell Irish Festival,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just going out and meeting people, a lot of familiar faces and new faces as well. I really enjoyed that. It was a good time.
Isn't it interesting that you can only campaign and do these type of things every 10 years, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I
you
mean, it's a very short window.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's essentially this race, we're operating within a 6-month time period. So other politicians are constantly campaigning.
Yeah.
We're limited in what we can do and additionally what we can say and take positions on. It's very difficult in that way. I would like to be able to go out. And the job itself is very isolating.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That is one of the downsides of being a judge is you have to cut all your attorney friends out and you know, focus and not go out to bars and restaurants that you might like to go to, and occasionally you run into the random person that you put in jail for a period of time, and they aren't always glad to see you.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's difficult.
I could imagine. How much of your life is like Perry Mason or Matlock?
It used to be not necessarily like that, but when you were a practicing attorney, it's more like Night Court with Harry Anderson. If you remember that show, unfortunately not as funny, but there are comedic moments when you're in court. But generally, it's a fairly
wild.
serious thing. It's and we do have very good attorneys that practice in the area, which makes it easier on me. You know, it's the better the defense attorney, the better the prosecutor, the easier it is for a judge.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So we're talking about your campaign for Steuben County. Why am I telling you? I'm telling the viewer. We're talking about your campaign for Steuben County Family Court Judge. It's a 10-year term. So how can people help your campaign? How can people find out more?
Well, the first thing and most important thing is whether you're voting for me or any other candidate that's running this year is get out and vote.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the number one thing. And when I would ask everybody to look at the experience, you know, whether it be myself or any other candidate.
Sure.
That's what they should vote on, not necessarily party line. It's crucial that you look at their history, you look at what they've done, and I'm confident in the success of my campaign if people do that.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. Best of luck. I know we'll talk again before Election Day.
I look forward to it.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big 5. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Thank you so much to Steuben County and Family Court Judge Matt McCarthy for being on the program this morning. Let's go back to viewer comments. I wish there was a faster, calmer way to stop the pain of this train wreck rule. A lot of government stress out there. I think that's in reference to the next, how many, 4 or 5 months of the Biden administration. Next up, age discrimination is real and employers get away with it. And that's in reference to the proposal that will be on the ballot in November. Was age in there? And by the way, I don't disagree with you. Okay, so that is one that's adding age to it. But if you want age in there, you also have to take ethnicity, national origin, disability, sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. Okay, so thank you for that comment. Next up, a different comment. The trouble with mainstream media, they're like wolves sitting around their prey to kill with gotchas instead of policy. Yeah, well, that's 100%. I mean, I don't know who's on the Sunday shows, but if J.D. Vance, Tom Cotton, it is all gotchas. It's a fact check, interrupting you, trying to throw you off your game. Again, I go back to, remember when it was almost a controversy that Candy Crawley interrupted Mitt Romney because she was wrong, but interrupted and fact checked him in real time about Benghazi or something when he was debating Obama. And people said, you know, the moderator's supposed to be a moderator. You're not supposed to interject with your opinion or try to correct someone in a debate. Now that is not only not frowned upon, it's encouraged, as we saw with ABC. Don't think for a moment those moderators aren't getting some type of bonus. I'm not saying money or whatever, but ABC was happy with their performance, teaming up against Trump. Don't think for a moment they weren't. That's crystal clear. Okay. Do I have time? I do have time for this one real quick. David Harsanyi from Harsanyi, I think is how you say it. David Harsanyi is a senior writer at the Washington Examiner. And he said, so we've been through an entire debate, and Kamala Harris still hasn't explained any of her extraordinary policy flip-flops. I'm sorry. A person can't just wake up one morning and abandon their entire worldview without an explanation. I mean, they can try, but no sensible person would take them seriously. Sure, politicians have been calibrating and triangulating their positions since the beginning of time. Most have been compelled to explain their ideological evolution or have the decency to lie about it. None have ever relied on an army of anonymous campaign flacks to erase a lifetime of positions, not until Kamala Harris. We all understand Democrats are desperate to shield voters from their candidates' mind-numbing rhetoric. Who can blame them, right? Kamala Harris is an empty vessel to be filled with the aspirations and dreams of the gullible partisans. And allowing her to speak in public would kill all that joy quickly. These swirling platitudes and nervous laughter, however, don't suggest that Harris isn't bright. They suggest that she has no genuine philosophical or ethical belief system, other than perhaps obtaining and using power. Indeed, there's little chance she will coherently expound on her sudden policy U-turns because they make zero ideological sense. And they know the media, who we learn they don't value, but the media will not call her on it whatsoever. Let's remember that Harris hasn't merely been tinkering with the top marginal tax rate in her economic plan. She's on the record championing, often quite passionately and definitively, a bunch of completely harebrained extremism. When she endorsed the Green New Deal, and I'm not going to go through all the examples of it because there's so many. But modern campaigns exist to provide voters with information so they can make educated decisions. The vice president, self-styled defender of our sacred democracy, isn't even pretending it matters. That defining who she is matters. And that is their campaign strategy. Even former Obama ICE director John Sandwig said Harris has to answer why the administration waited so long to flip on the border, to change their opinion on the border. Does she have to answer? You know, so many people are saying she has to make a policy decision. She has to do this. She has to do that. Why? The media is letting her get away with doing what she wants to do, which is not give them access, which is not explain, just like in the debate when she was asked and didn't explain and they didn't call her on it, her U-turns, her 180s, her flip-flops. So why does she have to? Yes, you would think you would say, well, the voters have a right to know, because, I mean, she never went through the primary process. She never received a single vote. She went through the primary process in 2019, and those are now the policies she's disavowing. But I'm saying in this go-around, she's never received a single vote to be the nominee for president of the United States. Doesn't that deserve a little more scrutiny? If the media were serious, if the media were actually willing to do their jobs, they would say, no, we're not going to do these press gaggles and film your rallies and show you hugging that person at the store and all that. We're not going to do it anymore. We're not going to give you this positive coverage until you give us some coverage. They're not going to do it. Even the White House photographer says it's an unprecedented reduction in access to Kamala Harris. The White House Press Photographers Association condemned the unprecedented reduction in access to Vice President Harris in a letter urging her aides and campaign team to allow more photojournalists around the Democrat nominee. So she won't even allow photojournalists to be around her, let alone the actual media that could ask her questions. Since Vice President Harris became the nominee for President of the United States, the travel pool has been reduced from 13 to 9, an unprecedented reduction in access to a major presidential party candidate. Every other representative of the press pool has been allowed to continue to travel without interruption, while the 4 independent news photographer seats have been downgraded to 1. So not even the photographs. We got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I have to mention this because CNN's throwing down cover for Harris with this Springfield, Ohio story. Fear and frustration as political debate seizes on growing Haitian population. You've got Pete Buttigieg saying that Trump and Vance are demonizing immigrants to distract from their record. Now, the New York Post says that blame the Biden and Harris administration for Venezuelan gangs, migrants taking over Aurora, Colorado. So the list goes on and on. And why do I mention those? We're just skipping over them quickly. Douglas Murray says disinformation is once again in the news. On one side are people who say that if something sounds like a fake news story and smells like a fake news story, that it is indeed a fake news story. On the other side are people who say that if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it's probably already been eaten by a Haitian immigrant. Who to believe? In any normal period, it would be fairly easy to work out what is going on. In a story like the one from Springfield, Ohio, people make claims, the media investigates them, and then everybody decides what they believe. But who can you believe today? Over recent days, a lot of effort has once again gone into highlighting the problem of online misinformation. I don't want to go through all of it because he gives individual stories. It says here that, where is it? I had it marked here, but I'm jumping ahead on myself here. So at the end, at one end are outright lies, and at the other, there is what you might call the approved narrative. For example, just in the last few weeks, we have seen the Democrats pretend that Kamala Harris never had an oversight on the southern border. Is that disinformation? I should say so. But would you want the government of Australia, Brazil, or anywhere else decide that for us? Well, of course not. The American people can decide that for ourselves. I just watched Matt Walsh's new documentary film. That's jumped ahead. So the idea is government censorship in all this because they want to have this disinformation boards. Remember, Biden was pushing for it, where they get to decide what you see and what you don't. So government censorship is a greater threat than disinformation. But I would also add, and I mentioned this earlier on the program, the media now is at a point where they're willing to censor themselves, as we've seen on social media, but also outlets that will not report on something that's going to be negative to Harris. So it's really not so often what they report, it's what they don't report that is so detrimental. So yes, government censorship is obviously a major issue and something to take very seriously, but it's also about the self-censorship of these news organizations that say, we're not going to bring that up because if we bring up the explosion of crime caused by immigrants, for example, in Colorado, Aurora, Colorado, that reflects poorly on the border czar. So we actually have to say we don't believe that Kamala Harris was ever the border czar. That, by the way, that piece about the Venezuelan gangs, Christopher Rufo wrote, it's in the New York Post. Okay, by the way, majority of likely voters, according to a New York Times Siena poll, blame Kamala Harris for the record illegal immigration at the southern border. How much blame, if any, do you think Kamala Harris, as sitting vice president, should receive for problems at the border? to which 63% said they place a lot of blame or some blame on Harris. That's a large number, and trust me, they know it. Mark Molinaro, I don't have time to get to it. It's on Empire Report. He's a little bit outside of our viewing range, running for re-election for Congress. He was the gubernatorial candidate at one time. He has a really good opinion piece out about his immigration plan. He says, first, we need to reinstate Remain in Mexico, deploy physical barriers and innovative technology at the border to stop the unmitigated flow of illegal crossings and deadly drugs. We also need fully funded law enforcement so they can return to patrolling the border instead of processing people and paperwork. In May of last year, I voted for legislation called the Secure the Border Act that makes these changes. We need the Biden-Harris administration to come to the negotiating table so that we can get that over the finish line. And second, Governor Kathy Hochul needs to repeal New York's sanctuary state designation. This designation has allowed New York State to be a destination for illegal immigrants and has created a problem that's twofold. It allows unvetted individuals, even those with a criminal history, to enter our communities and avoid deportation, and it overwhelms our already stretched social services, costing us billions. We need relief, and we need it now. Now let's take a break. Our last break of the Friday edition of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Get your last minute comments in so I can read them before we head out the door. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox as we broadcast live and proudly from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Trump has pledged to eliminate taxes on overtime pay. Quote, finally catch a break. I know that appeals to many of you. So expect Vice President Harris to make an announcement that the media gives her credit for sometime in the next week, that she vows to eliminate taxes on overtime pay. Remember when they gave her credit for no tax on tips that Trump had been pushing for a while, and then they said Harris's plan overwhelmingly liked by Republicans. Yeah, because it was Trump's plan. So expect her to talk about eliminating taxes on overtime pay here soon. Democrat Senator Richard Blumenthal says that Americans will be shocked and appalled by the Trump assassination attempt report. I think the American people are going to be shocked, astonished, and appalled by what we will report to them about the failures by the Secret Service and the assassination attempt of the former president. But I think they also ought to be appalled and astonished by the failure of the Department of Homeland Security to be more forthcoming, to be as candid and frank as it should be to them in terms of providing information. All right, one last thing, because I told you I would mention New York State issues. The New York Post editorial board talked about Cuomo's hearing in Washington this week, and we missed talking about it in depth. We talked about it a little bit where Stefanik and others, we talked about it with Congressman Nick Langworthy yesterday. Stefanik is hitting it out of the park. But Cuomo instead said that Donald Trump willfully deceived the American people, and his lies and denial delayed our response and let the virus spread. Willful deception, lies and denial. A lot of projection there, Andrew. He blamed the Centers for Medicare. He blamed the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention too. Yes, I'm trying to rush through stories here at the end, so that's when I get tongue-tied. They never called me after the order went out. You would think if they had a problem with the directive, they would have called. It was so outrageous, said Cuomo. As if the CDC's job is to micromanage the notorious micromanager. As the governor, the buck stopped with Cuomo, but now he pretends he was little more than a hapless bystander to the administration's decisions. In Cuomo's eyes, he's the victim, but his actions during the pandemic speak louder than words. Cuomo knew exactly how bad it was as early as June 7th, 2020, when he directed an aide to send an email to his inner circle calling the nursing home deaths a great debacle and warning, don't you see how bad this is, or do we admit error and give up? He has plainly chosen to never, ever admit error, even when the proof is undeniable. He shamelessly tried to cover up the impact of his screw-up, reportedly personally edited the July 6, 2020 state report that massively undercounted New York COVID deaths. Now, witness testimony in the final House report says Cuomo's order led to about 9,000 excess care home COVID deaths. Adding insult to injury, Cuomo lacks the decency or guts to apologize to the families of the elderly New Yorkers who died, despite being prompted to multiple times by committee members of both parties. On his way out of the chamber, one such family member put it bluntly, "You killed my parents and thousands of others. You're a liar. You're in denial." And I can't say the last word. Cuomo, by all accounts, still hopes for a political comeback. That's going to be an awfully tough sled if he sticks to his lies. New Yorkers, especially those who lost loved ones, will never forget what he did, nor forgive a man who refuses to own up to the truth. And that's why Stefanik received that round of applause and standing ovation when she said, "You're never going to win elected office again." Speaking of New York, elected leaders are leaving their posts early. It has become a new trend across New York. They get elected, they don't want the job anymore. Move on. Not really your duty there. Governor Hochul has an opinion piece out this morning. Kathy Hochul, how many more dead children will it take to ban the AR-15? You can find that for yourself. By the way, New York City Council passes slavery reparations legislation to yield material solutions from U.S. history. That should be interesting. We'll watch that unfold. That was the last quick news of the day at the end of the program. Have a great weekend, everyone. If you're going to the races, have a great time. Tell me all about it. On Monday morning, I want to hear your comments. We will be back every weekday morning starting at 6 a.m. with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. As I said, have a great weekend. We'll see you bright and early Monday morning. I look forward to it already.